Hi everyone, welcome to the Space Alchemist YouTube channel. My name is Bhumika. In today's session, I really want to take up a couple of questions and a couple of topics that a lot of people do ask me, and a lot of people who have questioned on multiple platforms as well. And I generally felt that it was a need and a time to address all of this. I'd rather call this a monologue rather than a podcast or a video depicting any information because this is just summarizing all that I was able to collect and kind of interpret in front of all of you. So I'll be covering multiple topics today, be it Vastu, spirituality, mythology, astrology, whatever possible, keeping in mind of all the questions that do come to mind that I remember that were asked, read, or kind of strategized, keeping in mind of the things we saw. But yeah, coming back to the thing, I really hope that you guys don't get bored because there is no structure at which we'll be following into today's video. I'm really just going to make it as organic as possible and kind of, go with the flow and see where the video kind of ends up in. So I think let's get started. One of the most fundamental topics that I've heard or questions that I'm always asked, especially when it comes to consultations, and I'm predominantly saying in a place like Bangalore, irrespective of whether someone believes in Vastu or not, or whether they see themselves living in a Vastu compliant space, they still choose to get their spaces done as per Vastu. And this is almost 4 out of 5 homeowners that are there, or 4.5 out of 5 homeowners that are there in Bangalore, because they do realize that real estate value is also high and resale value is also high. But apart from that, there is a small section out of this 4.5 individuals in the entire like if you take it out on a whole, about 1 to 2% of, or even you can say 10% of the people here genuinely believe in Vastu, and they come from an astrological perspective, and most of them who come from an astrological perspective want their spaces to be designed according to their astrological birth charts. So coming from a designer's perspective, I can vouch for you that irrespective of incorporation of astrology or not, you can have complete dependence on Vastu alone to make sure your spaces are harmonized by just using the design logics of Vastu into your spaces. But if you really want me to get into more details of that, let me tell you that currently I do not integrate astrology or any of or numerology or any of that into my design practice of Vastu. I strictly follow Vastu as a design subject and try to incorporate it into designs to help people not only harmonize their energies of the space but also have aesthetics involved in them. But nevertheless, there are a couple of things that I want to share on a general note that you guys can probably inquire with to see how you can, benefit from astrology, numerology, spirituality, and the other assets that come along with it. Firstly, when we talk about astrology, the basic fundamental crux that is there, again, before I tell you guys more, I do not practice astrology. This is a subject that I'm learning without having pre notions about them because I genuinely want to pick it up as a subject to understand the depth of it. But with whatever I've been able to learn and pick up, one of the most foundational topics or concepts in astrology when it comes to is understanding the timelines. And when I mean timelines, irrespective of who you are, where you are born, however you are, the four fundamental units that affect every timeline of a person is the four things, that is Mahadasha, Antardasha, Prati Antardasha, and Sukshma Dasha. Mahadasha is basically timelines like your what do you say, like your planetary Mahadashas, like your Saturn Mahadasha, your Venus Mahadasha, your Sun Mahadasha. Each of them range for a different year span. So for, if you look into Sun, it ranges for about 6 years. If you look into Moon, it ranges for about 10 years. Likewise, there are multiple timelines that each and every individual experiences in their life, and based on this, your life, kind of unravels, or your destiny unravels as per astrological beliefs. So, for example, keeping in mind if somebody is going through phases like Saturn Mahadasha, Ketu Mahadasha, or if they're going through Rahu Mahadasha, these are told to be very testing periods because one, Rahu, Ketu, and Shani or Saturn are very testing planets. They're very karmic oriented planets. They're very negatively absorbed planets as per astrology. So you are bound to reap a lot of negative effects during these periods. To give you a general breakdown of how I would say is, if you are in your Saturn Mahadasha, the whole concept of Saturn deals with karma. So you will be dealing with a lot of karma related experiences in your life, or resolving karma related experiences in your life. Saturn is told to be a very testing planet, but also known to be a very rewarding planet. In case if you're always right and your intentions were always set to, you will always achieve good things at the end. But yes, it's very delaying, very slow, but very time taking as well. In the same case, when you can come to Ketu Mahadasha, Ketu is basically a planet which deals with detachment. So you might have experiences which are extremely hard again during this phase, where you feel that you're detaching from all the relationships, you're detaching from life experiences. You seem to be more like a renunciate, or you have very hurtful experiences where you feel like you're always having a death experience being alive. So probably one of the most commonly seen things is people when they go through the Ketu Mahadasha is that if they're in a relationship, their relationship tends to end just randomly. Or they get to know their spouse was cheating or something like those things happen during the Ketu Mahadasha, and there is an instant unexpected change that happens. And when it comes to Rahu Mahadasha, yes, this is also told to be a very negative dasha out of all. But here the statistics or how it is invoked is a little different. When you understand Rahu, Rahu is a lot of attachment. It's about illusions, it's about fastness, it's about pace. So when you segregate Rahu, the initial phases of the Mahadasha of Rahu may be helping you get attached to a lot of worldly pleasures. It might get you attached into a lot of illicit drugs, or alcohol, smoking. All of these things might get built up during the first phase of the Mahadasha. In the center part, you might start suffering before, because of it, because slowly the things start to come into things, like you might start getting small health related issues as those things kind of come up. And finally at the end, it's really your testing and draining time, where everything really comes and hits you at one point where you're unable to take it. So you might have extreme influences, because if you're into alcohol and smoking, you might have health issues like hazardous ones. So all of these are how exactly you go about it. So initially the whole point is Rahu builds an illusion for you, thinking that this is the best option. As you move forward into the later extents of the Rahu Mahadasha, you realize that all of these were illusions, and you come into the reality and you start suffering because of it. So this is the kind of tendencies that come with Rahu Mahadasha. While you talk about Jupiter and you talk about Venus, you talk about Sun, these are told to be a little more positive planets, because these are told to be giving you a lot more rewarding things. But yes, eventually it depends on where your planets are actually sitting in your D1 chart, in your D9 chart, keeping in mind if you're looking at relationship charts or your actual life destiny charts. So you can go into details of that. But apart from that, one dasha that is there is Moon Mahadasha, can be told as a neutral one, at least as to what I have been taught. The reason why I say this is Moon is everything related to intuition and heavy mood swings. So there are high chances that if the Moon is not well placed in your chart, you might have extreme depression, anxiety, or mentally related issues that you might face during these 10 years of the entire dasha. But what actually happens for these factors to influence your life is a completely different aspect. What I was talking about until now was just the Mahadasha. In the Mahadasha, like for example, you have the Sun, which is basically for 6 years. All right. In that, there are again in between divisions of, again, in the Sun Mahadasha, you have Sun Antardasha or Moon Antardasha. And again, you have Sukshma Dasha, Pratyanta Dasha. There's 4 different levels at which each of them are checked. And based on this micromanagement that you do in 4 different levels, you'll be able to understand what is the impact and whether the timeline is good or bad. So generally what actually happens is somebody goes to an astrologer and you go for asking what is your life prediction, which most of them, especially from an Indian context, do, because they're very curious, skeptical, or they believe in having their birth charts right. One of the most important things is they take is your birth, your date of birth, your name, your year of birth, and your time of birth and your place of birth. They upload it and they generate a couple of charts, most influentially being your D1 and D9 charts. And once they look into it, they start analyzing what are your, firstly, they analyze what are your Mahadashas, Antardashas, Pratyantardashas, and Sukshma Dashas. Then they start to identify what is your, how many Sadhe Satis you have. Generally, it is told to be you have at least 2 Sadhe Satis. Sadhe Sati basically means 7 years of Saturn moving around your birth chart, and these are told to be extremely painful. Along with that, they also look at understanding what are the negatively placed planets, even if it's a good planet that is there, but if it's placed in a bad house, what are the effects of it. So just to give you an example, when you look into your D1 chart and imagine you have Saturn in your first house. Saturn is first of all not a very good planet when it comes to getting rewards. If rewards are good, but it takes a lot of time to reap them. So people having probably Saturn in the first house, that's the Lagna house, in your charts can depict early life struggles and a lot of maturity in early age. If people have Saturn probably sitting in your fourth house, it can represent people being detached from homely environments or having a lot of struggles from homebound places. If people have Sun and Saturn sitting in one house, it can represent conflicts between the child and the father, because Sun represents the father and Saturn represents the son. And as you guys know, as per mythology as well, Sun and Saturn are like enemies because they contrast opposites of each other. So there might be influences of that. Just to give you a quick run through, each house sitting in the entire chart has its own attributes. So if you talk about the first house, it has self identity. If you talk about the fifth house, it talks about love, marriage, or relationships and stuff like that, or creative pursuits that you have. Your seventh house deals with your partnerships, your business partnerships, your romantic partnerships. Ninth house deals with destiny. 11th house deals with friendships. So each of them have their own attributes as associated, and they kind of see what house is aspecting where it's looking at to see the best results. Along with that, when you come to the D9 chart, specifically it deals with relationships. Again, those are analyzed in detail to see what kind of relationship you'll have, or a spouse, or what kind of lifestyle you'll have in terms of romantic attachments or relationships. So each of them have their own influence in life. And when you relate it to astrology, when you relate astrology to Vastu, this is a completely different mindset. Because when you talk about Vastu, and if you guys you ever have the opportunity to buy my book, which is called as Vastu Shastra Vedic Vastu Handbook, this is basically dependent on a combination of understanding of planets and how their associations are there on a space level as well. So when you get into that, there are four fundamental factors that actually govern a person's existence and how they're affected. Where Vastu only covers 25% of it, the remaining 75% deals with karma, their actions, the rewards, and sometimes even how they associate life to and how they react to it. So not everything is set in stone, and you have to understand not everything has remedy. Sometimes you are destined to go through a certain experience to help you raise from your lower vibration to a higher vibration. Even if you come into spirituality, one of the most important things we talk about is when a person goes through intense pain. It's called as the dark night of the soul, or awakening through the dark night of the soul. It comes from an expression to say that when a person goes through intense pain, a soul or a person has two opportunities to go through in life. Either you take the pain and make it as your purpose, or you become bitter and you start hurting people. As a phrase goes, hurt people, hurt people. This is what happens when people don't heal. So these are the two levels at which souls generally transfer, and always I would suggest go to the first one, because it's always important where you transmute your pain into power and kind of rise in your life. And most of these people, when you relate it to astrology as well, and even if you take it in a spiritual sense, when people have a higher calling, or they're told to be like all these people who have come from really low areas of life, who have achieved a lot, are all people who actually turn pain into power by transmuting the energy and healing rather than sitting in bitterness. So even those aspects can be read in astrology, and you can also neutralize them or support them by incorporating Vastu properly into your spaces. So at this point, I would suggest, yes, you can incorporate Vastu and astrology, but irrespective of astrological fields or spirituality perspectives, Vastu can be independently applied to a space and still reap the benefits of the same. Now that I've covered a couple of things in terms of astrology and Vastu, I'd like to take a little more, deeper conversations into spirituality. And the reason why I say this is spirituality is very different for each of us, because each of our expectations and each of our life goals have taught us different things. So as person progresses in life, I at least personally believe that age does not bring experience. It's life experiences that teach you maturity and experience. And one of the most fundamental thing or fundamental life lesson that I was probably able to learn with an intense period of my own life was to understand that not everybody who are bad to you are bad people, and not everybody who is smiling at your face are meaning good intentions to you. It's very important that you read between the lines to understand who has good intentions and who doesn't. And I think, as per, if you guys have read Mahabharata, and you guys are aware of the story of Mahabharata, one of the most commonly talk about scene in Mahabharata is when, there's a scene when the Pandavas and Kauravas sit for a game of dice, and Pandavas tend to lose everything. And there's a point where, Draupadi is pulled into the courtroom, and she's basically humiliated in front of the court, and people start to pull at her fabric. And it is at that moment when Draupadi literally surrendered to the universe, and she called help at Lord Krishna. And that is when the fabric never ended, irrespective of how much humiliation was happening to her. This is the best example of spirituality I would give you, because this is the kind of aspect that I could probably tell you, because the whole concept for me when it comes to spirituality is the state of surrender. Because most of the times we come with preconceived notions of how life should be, or what timeline I should have. What I think, as a general note, many people say, by the age of 18 I should be finishing college, by the age of 25 I should get married, by the age of probably 30 I should have a house, I should have family. All of these are the restrictions that we're placing upon ourselves with the mindsets that we have, because we are here trying to believe what the society tells is right. We forget that even the basic fundamental existence of our own life is not in our control, and neither is death. And even irrespective of this, we do not know how to surrender to the forces which is even more than us, actually, to kind of say that, we are not eternal, we are not immortal. There is something that is governing us, irrespective of how you believe it in God, believe it in the universe, or however you see this. There is something that is existing beyond us that is taking in control of every action and reaction. So at least for me, the concept of destiny and free will are equally hand in hand. But I believe destiny is going to be pre-written for everybody who has to experience life to grow. But free will comes into a place where you see how you react to those situations, because if you want to choose to be bitter or you want to choose to heal is completely in your hands. So, saying that, like I said, spirituality for me, some of the things I personally connect to is when I went through an intense period of nearly 4 years between 2017 to 2021. One of the most important books that actually came into my hand was Mahabharata. And when you people actually read Mahabharata as not just as a story, but you kind of understand every emotion that is happening in every stage of that particular epic, is something that everybody can relate to in a general sense. There are literally family members fighting because of position, power. Sometimes there's greed, there are people being affected by it, there are friends, there are families, there are promises that are broken. There's so many aspects of every one of us that we can see and experience that each of us can relate to, and that really sat with me, the book. And I think the Bhagavata Gita that comes within the entire chapters of the Mahabharata is basically the entire conversation that happens between Arjuna and Krishna, especially during the battle of Mahabharata, actually happening on the field of Kurukshetra. Initially, when on day one, when the fight or the battle is about to start, um there's a saying that, Arjuna and Krishna are having a conversation on when both the parties meet, and Arjuna looks at the opponents, that is the Pandavas. He sees his teacher Dronacharya being there, he sees his son Ashwatthama being there, he sees Karna being there, he sees his uncle Bhishma there. All the people that he's related to as family is all standing on the opposite side, and he comes to a position initially, even before they just enter the battlefield. He looks at Lord Krishna and says, what is the purpose of my life if I have to fight against my own people? Right? What is the use if I have to fight with people I've literally looked up to, grown with, and literally who have handheld me? And it is at that point that, Krishna says that it is a time to surrender, because irrespective of whatever it is, you have your righteous dharma to do, and this is your dharma. Irrespective if you fight them or not, go it with a pure intentional mind that what you're doing is out of the righteousness that is there, and leave everything else. And there's also another situation which represents an example of showing absolute surrender in the same face, is when there's a conversation that's happening between Draupadi and Yudhishthir, and Draupadi says, it's not always right to take revenge, but it's not always right to forgive as well. It's very important that you understand how to play and understand people's intentions. If people are genuinely coming from a space of not wanting to give wrong intentions out to people, it was by mistake or it was probably a miscommunication or anything as such, it's okay. But never try to be okay with the fact that if somebody is genuinely trying to hurt you, do not forgive them. Forgive them from a place where you want to make peace with yourself, but do not forget what they have done, because once a snake is always a snake, right? It only sheds its skin, but it doesn't change. And relating to this, I think one of the most fundamental concepts of karma come in, that eventually if anybody listen to the snake thinking that they're going to find better, eventually the snake will bite them too. So always make sure that you move with the right intentions. Even if people not around you are going to support you, there is something that is governing on top, and that is going to give you the right path to success, or a right path to living. So I personally come from an aspect that irrespective if I'm consciously aware and I or not actually, and I know there's something that is eating at me, I try to resolve it and I try to apologize to it internally as well, and to the person as well, to kind of understand where the person is coming from. And when you come into comparing Vastu into spirituality now, one thing that I would really like to probably let people know is spiritual people are those people who are moving towards enlightenment. And if you want to go a little more deeper, when you understand the human body, there are nearly 7 chakras, and each chakra that is there has its own activation point. So you have the Mooladhara chakra, which is the root chakra, and you have the crown chakra, which is, and each of them have their own levels of enlightenment. You have a throat chakra and all of that, and each of them represent a particular kind of communication technique. So for throat, you'll basically deal with the communication bit. So each of them have their own entities that you awaken through the Kundalini awakening. And one of the most important things through this spiritual awakening is detachment. It is truly and completely surrendering and detachment. And if you guys have ever had the opportunity to read books, most of the books that you see talk about enlightenment through detachment. You have to detach from something to be able to even manifest it. Even when you come into manifestation, many people say, if you've heard a lot of people, celebrities who talk, which they even pop up on screens and all of that when you go on your YouTube and all, one of the most core things they say is that you have to leave a concept or an idea into the world, and you have to go about doing your own things, and the world will manifest it for you and bring it back into you. Because the more attached you are to something, the more you're pushing it away, and the more you're detached from something, the more you're attracting it towards yourself. So this is also something that you do. So like I said, even when you compare it to Vastu, don't be too attached to the outcomes that you want out of it. What I would suggest is, even if you're having any problems and you go about doing a Vastu remedy, do the remedy, keep the belief that it's going to work, and go about doing your own work. And eventually, you'll be able to see a lot of results and changes that you have. The minute you start getting anxious, saying that I put this remedy, nothing is working, I did that, nothing is working, it's really not going to manifest, because the more attached you are, the more you're going to push things farther. So when you're talking about these occult sciences, or when you're talking about designing spaces based on occult, you have to keep one thing, that everything works on trust. Unless and until you trust and surrender, nothing in this world works. I assure you, when you come into understanding different concepts of occult, you will be able to understand and to surrender to a lot more things easily. One thing that I would probably let you guys know is, before I end this video, is if you guys are aware about multiple other occults. So this was something I was reading about. I have not personally experienced, so I've tried too much into depth. But people who follow tarot cards, and or people who do a lot of tarot readings, one of the major things that they talk about is a deck that they have. I think it's a spread of 72 cards. And in this 72 cards, there are multiple major arcanas that come in. So you have the world, you have the death, the river, I think the tower cards and all of this. And each of them represent different attitudes of how a life is supposed to be. So if I'm not wrong, the death talks about intense transformation. It can actually talk about actual deaths and all of that. So people go about interpreting it in different ways. Some of them pick up intuitively. Some of them actually go through traditional, readings, picking up the actual meaning of it. So this is also something that you can go about using to actually manifest a lot of things. But like I said, these are additional core values that actually go into a space. Along with that, even specifically leading to Vastu alone, even in my book, you'll be able to see some of the allied fields that we look into is aura reading, we look into face reading, we look into palmistry, and all of these to make sure you energize the space more. But again, like I said, these are additional fields. They're not entirely dependent to go about designing your spaces, because Vastu already has a set rule which gives you enough requirements to design spaces and actually benefit from spaces living in that space. And again, I'm telling you all of this completely from a Vedic Vastu design perspective, which comes and is derived from the 4 Vedas that we have. And when you talk about the universities, you have multiple universities like Takshashila and all of that, where again, all of these have been derived, studied, and built upon. So if you guys do want to learn more, you can go about reading the different, the 6 universities on which Vastu is built on. You can go read about the 4 Vedas that we have and how each of them have contributed into building Vastu today. These are wonderful, elaborate concepts and multiple textbooks that are available that give you enlightenment and understanding of Vastu in a little more deeper context. But before I actually end today's session, or today's podcast, I really hope that today I gave you an overview of what is what and how you can relate to it. And I really, like I said, did not want to have a structure of how I follow this, but rather give you insight and information to how to approach Vastu, astrology, spirituality, tarot, whatever that is, into your lives, and how to kind of relate to all of them. And for those of you who are interested to get a hands-on experience in learning from the foundational concepts of Vastu till the very end of applying remedies into your space from a design logic, then we have our Vastu Shastra Vedic Vastu Handbook that is exclusively launched on Poti.com in India and Amazon KDB for all other countries around the world. You can use it not just for designing your spaces from planning level, but also for your interiors or any renovation projects you're doing, irrespective of what design typology that you choose, be it residential space, commercial space, industrial spaces, retail, hospitality, be it anything at all. This will be your one guide for everything. You don't need third party interventions. You don't need a design guru. You don't need anybody. This is a complete book that will help you understand from starting how to apply a particular Vastu grid on a site till the very time of how you go about placing your, simple and easy Vastu remedies using design oriented remedies such as plants, yantras, materials, and color. So, saying that the link will be added in the description box, please do get your hands as soon as possible. It would be available in the links, like I said, below. If not in the links below, you can check out our channel description where all the details for all the different countries and regions will be available in our about section of our channel, and you can purchase it from there. So saying that, thank you very much, guys. And if you really feel today's session was insightful or today's podcast or monologue was insightful, helpful, and you want more content like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, leave a comment in the comment section about your experience and if you want another session like this. So saying that, thank you very much.